What's up? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of Push in the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We got a jam-packed show. We got our first off the ball segment. We got our deep dives, as we do every single Wednesday when Leger joins the show. And then we got our mailbag, a jam-packed mailbag. You guys wanted a lot of draft questions.
Oh, boy.
Their eyes to the draft. So we'll be answering.
I'll be drinking my coffee and hanging out for that one.
Yeah, you'll be learning some draft prospects here at the end of this show. But we'll start with the first off the ball segment. We got a couple things we want to touch on. Joe Burrow became the latest star in the NFL to have his house burglarized on Monday night in Cincinnati.
Scary.
I've heard conflicting reports of where he lives back when I lived in Cincinnati. Maybe he has multiple houses, but maybe Indian Hill, maybe Mason, people have said. But no doubt that his home was broken into. A window was broken at his house. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce had theirs. Is this a worrisome trend for you?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, what's one thing you know about athletes? When they're working.
Exactly.
And what else? Where they're working. And more often than not, these guys don't have private security at the house. You know,
we really did, though.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah, sometimes they're the problem.
We're going to get to that. But when you leave, when you kiss your wife and you're like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow night after the game, like we're taking our flight, you have to have that faith that nothing bad's going to happen. Correct. And it fills you with anxiety and worry and things like these happening more and more often. You see the dollar amounts go up in contracts. These criminals are looking to hit a lick. Yeah. And you are you're a walking lick, essentially, with being out of the house and being on national television. They know where you're at, when you're there. It's a dangerous thing. I don't know what the solution is, but it's, living in this country, you would imagine that you are safe, but it's becoming more and more evident that our safety is not as surefire as I would imagine.
Yeah, it's really dangerous because, like Kyle said, it's like we have a set schedule, especially when you have a nationally televised game. Everybody knows you're not going to be home. Mm-hmm. And that's dangerous to Kyle's point because you just don't know who could be home. Could it be your wife? Could it be your kids?
You got kids in the crib.
Came in just, to stay for the weekend. So, I even go back to rest in peace to Sean Taylor. Like, the people that burglarized him and he unfortunately passed that day, like they knew that was his house. Yep. Right. So they're coming in, like Kyle said, to get an easy payday, to hit a quick lick. So it is worrisome and troublesome. And, people will say, well, aren't you in a gated community or this or that? I mean, it just depends on where you want to stay. Sometimes players want to be secluded. And unless you put a gate around your whole property, and even then, sometimes that doesn't stop somebody from jumping over a fence and trying to break in either. So I've seen videos where guys jump over 10-foot fences to break into people's houses. So
this is like Man on Fire, bro. This is like Denzel. Like you got to build a wall around your place and hire Denzel to hang out at the crib. Right? Yeah,
because you're just trying to live a normal life, even though you're not technically a normal person. But I know you guys are going to get onto his security or lack thereof, supposedly at his house.
Apparently, he had a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model that called in the 911 call.
Is that what it was?
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't see this? This is so he's married, right? Joe Burrow's married.
Longtime
girlfriend. So he's got a longtime girlfriend. But the person who made the call, apparently, and check me on this, is a Victoria's Secret runway model, Sports Illustrated model.
I cannot confirm.
She works for Joe. Okay. I'm wondering if he just has like maybe an assistant role or something like that. I would imagine that would be a fun gig to have. But I just thought that was funny too. They're like Sports Illustrated supermodel calls in 911.
Joe Burrow's assistant.
They did allude to the fact that she was working for Joe Burrow.
Okay,
but they were like, this person also has a bio. You know what I'm saying? And it's just as impressive as Joe Burrow.
All right, let's get to this other thing off the top here where, if you haven't seen it yet, an incredible video with Brett Favre and Mark Gastineau, the former sack record holder.
What's beef?
New York Sack Exchange, baby.
Strahan breaking his record on a controversial play where Brett Favre rolled into Michael Strahan.
He couldn't have got out of there. Couldn't have
gotten out of there, but I think the play call was intended for a sack to be had on that play. But let's watch this clip.
Now I thought we met a long time ago. At least I saw you.
Right.
How you doing?
When you fell down for him. I'm going to get my sack back. Dude.
You probably would hurt me.
Well, I don't care. You hurt me.
I believe Gastineau. I believe he's hurt.
Oh, no. He's
very hurt.
I mean, he had that record for a while, man. I want to say at least 20-something years. So, like, at the time, it seemed like nobody was ever going to catch that record, right? And Strahan had a miraculous year. I won't say miraculous, but he was playing at an elite level when that sack occurred. And to Mike's point, a lot of people were saying maybe they purposely, because Brett Favre had a real good relationship with Michael Strahan, booted to that side. Right now, again, when you look at it in real time, if it wasn't quote unquote called on purpose to go to his side, there's no, like you said, there's no way he was getting out of that because he booted right into Strahan running up the field. Like we've seen multiple quarterbacks, whether it's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, hit the ground so they don't take unnecessary hits.
Yep.
Right. Now, again, was this something that because they are close friends, he told his coach, hey, let's roll out to the right, just give him one more opportunity? Only Brett, his coaching staff, the offense knows that. Right. But I feel Mark Gastineau because, and it's not me just being a homer, being a Jets guy.
And a D lineman.
Exactly. Like it's hard to get that many sacks in a season, right? You're talking about, and I don't even know when Mark Gastineau did it, was it a 14-game regular season?
1984. Letlet's see.
Because I know Strahan was 16 games.
These are good questions. These are all good questions.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you think about
16 games.
So it was even playing field, 16 games. You're talking about getting a sack and a half a game, right? Because what was the record, 22 and a half?
I think he had been to 20 twice and 17 or 18.
Oh, he was a dog. Him, Marty Lyons, all of them, they were dogs.
Because that's when my old man played, and I remember Mark Gastineau was the name, that was the name to know.
So like
he had 20 in 1981, he had 19 in 1983, and then 22 in 1983.
Man, muddled around 20 piece extra crispy every year.
3 straight All-Pros for him.
Pass rushers need more mullets.
Yeah.
Mark Gastineau.
And it was a beautiful mullet.
He was business in the front, big time sack party in the back.
But yeah, like I understand him having that hurt, right? Just because you worked your life to be in that position. And then you talked about it, Mike, like the consistency of him always being around 20 anyway. So he was getting close to that record every year.
Yep.
And he finally was able to break through that wall. So like if you feel like something was given to somebody, hell yeah, you hurt. Like I worked for this. Like especially in the 80s, nobody was giving away free sacks.
Yeah,
like,
and you weren't getting nowhere near the dollar amount back then. And Brett Favre made a good point in his tweet. He wanted to clear the air.
I saw that.
He did a
number of tweets.
He did a thread on Twitter, and I thought it was well done. There's a few other things that he should probably clear the air on social media. But I would say, as it pertains to this, and sorry, no offense to the Packers fans, as it pertains to this, I thought it was well done by Brett because it puts things into perspective. Guys back then who were getting 22 sacks were getting $200,000, $300,000 at the very most playing the position. Now you take a look at these edge rushers; they're making an astronomical dollar amount every year. What's a top edge rusher getting per year? $35 million. Yeah. Okay, you know how long you would have to play if you were Mark Gastineau getting 20 sacks a year to make $35 million?
70 years? I was like 70 years.
Times 2, times 3. I mean, and I had this conversation with my dad, and these old timers, these OGs, they're all about the young guys getting more money because that was the goal back then. And it's nice to see this thing move forward. But for a guy like Gastineau, your opportunities get cut short when you no longer are the sack champion. Obviously, you look back on this stuff, and Brett said, look, at signings, his asking price can't be as high because he's no longer the sack champion. Yeah. The Hall of Fame argument, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you're the sack champion and if you've done it this number of times.
He seems like the kind of guy who writes sack champion on his signature, too.
You know what I'm saying?
Why wouldn't you? You earned that right.
But go hang out at any of these signings. And the old-timers, they have monikers and stuff like that.
Without a doubt.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Nicknames.
I think even to put it into perspective, the type of game that was played when Mark Gastineau was playing compared to when Strahan was totally different. You would have to think that Strahan had way more opportunity because the NFL has evolved into a passing league, right? Now, even when Strahan played, it was run first still, but it was even more run first when Gastineau played. So for a guy to get 22 and a half in a run-heavy NFL, like that's saying something in regards to your production and how elite you are. So to your point, like that's something that affected his life. His livelihood, right? Because when you're the single season sack holder, like you always have that moniker, you always have that title, and now you don't have that. So now when Strahan goes to signings, I'm the NFL's current leader in single seasons and sacks. Like that's probably a couple extra $100,000 in your pocket, right? So like I get the hurt.
Well, now look where Strahan is, right? Strahan's on like every.
Oh, he's on every show.
Dude, like he is everywhere, and obviously, I still believe that it was Favre ran into it. Like I think it was.
It feels like it. It,
For sure.
It smells like it. But you know what? As an offensive lineman, sacks is what defensive linemen go by. Wins, Super Bowls, stuff like that for quarterbacks, touchdowns, yards for receivers. But for an offensive lineman, the only real thing that we can hang our hat on is Pro Bowls and All Pros. And I remember in my 4th year, I had made 3 straight. I made my 3rd one at tackle because we had a guy go down. So I switched to tackle after my all-pro year at guard. And I barely made it to the Pro Bowl. Thank God for the Chicago Bears fan vote. And then the 4th year I went back to guard and I was like, all right, now I'm going to make my run and I'm going to make 5 straight. And my goal was like, I wanted to go get a gold jacket. You know what I mean? And it still hurts me today knowing that I was having a really good 4th year. I got rolled up on by one of my teammates. And I never got that 4 straight, which I think would have rolled into 5 straight, 6 straight. You know how these things go, Mike. And I look around the league and I'm super happy for guys like Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin, albeit not perfect from a health standpoint. They've strung it together for so long. And I can relate to Mark Gastineau saying that hurt me. You know what I mean? While physically it does hurt you, it's the mental hurt, and you can't go back in time. You can't make up that stuff. So in terms of legacy, I understand where Mark Gastineau is coming from. He does have a legitimate gripe there. I thought Brett Favre handled it well in the moment, though. He said, I'm going to get my sack back. And Brett said, hey,
without a doubt.
That might hurt me. That might hurt me, Mark.
The guy was like, well, Brett, we have to keep siding.
Yep.
It's like, I liken it to, what was the Bernie Mac movie, Mr. 3000 or something? So it's like, for Mark Gastineau, it was like Mr. Single Season sack record holder.
Yep.
Right? And now, like, you can't have that. And even Bernie Mac, remember they went back and they were like, 3 of your hits didn't count. So he finishes up with 2,999 hits. So he becomes Mr. 2,999 hits. Doesn't have the same ring to it, right? So it's just like, again, I get it, right? Because not only are you affecting his future livelihood, but it's also, I would say it's a pride thing. Like you had that title for so many years. And if you feel like it was essentially taken from you or stolen from you because somebody didn't quote unquote earn it on the last sack, now I feel the hurt. I feel why you were hurt.
I saw Mr. 3000 in theaters.
Did you?
I did too. Bernie Mac, man.
Great. He was
Angela Bassett.
Classic.
Top of this game. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to our deep dives of this week.
Hey, Brett, we got.
It's a team almost too good to be true.
You guys ain't ready for us.
Kick your game day off right as the Tops team tackles all the biggest headlines around the league.
Who's got 2 thumbs and loves this next segment?
Sunday mornings on CBS Sports Network.
I think so. All right, our deep dives today. Not going to be about Dexter Lawrence, but they are. Leger, what do you have?
Chill.
Locker room disputes.
Okay.
I kind of like this one.
Yes, I love this.
How often do they happen? Is this a reoccurring thing? How does it affect the team chemistry? Locker room disputes happen quite often.
And there's levels to it.
And there's definitely levels to it, right? You got to think the locker room is such a unique place, right? There's people from different religious backgrounds, economic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. And a lot of times when those characteristics get mixed in, disputes happen, right? Now the question is, we always had a saying, never let things that happen on the field bleed into the locker room, right? And it's easier said than done. And I bring this up because obviously, unless you've been on a rock, everybody saw the interview post-game that A.J. Brown had with the media, and we're going to play a short clip of it.
What are some things you think that the offense needs to improve on? Passing. What are the conversations like with Jalen during a game like this, where maybe the passing game isn't everything you want it to be?
Not too much conversation, honestly. I don't know.
Now, this isn't uncommon for receivers once they're not getting the football. A.J. Brown's a top 5 receiver in the league, and some may even say he's a top 3 receiver in the league. And it's been noticeable how his targets have gone down this year. And when you go back and watch the film, there are opportunities there. I remember Tom Brady vividly saying, my number one guy, I always wanted to get him going early, right? Just so he can get in a rhythm in the game. I can get into a rhythm of the game. When your top playmaker is happy on the outside, it just makes the flow of the offense a lot better, right? And we've seen, again, with Saquon's, uptick in carries, his numbers go down. But I don't equate that to, A.J. Brown not getting opportunities, because when you look at somebody like Lamar Jackson and their rushing offense, I mean, he's still top 2 in passing yards. Well, because of the bye now, he's like top 10 in passing yards.
He's tops.
Yeah, he's top 2 in passing touchdowns, right? So when you talk about a team that actually runs the ball, but still Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball all around the yard, you can still do it as well. So when you look at it and when you look at film, there are times A.J. Brown has opportunities. Jalen Hurts just doesn't turn it loose, and he takes off and runs, right? So obviously A.J. Brown is frustrated because when you have an elite playmaker on the outside, they want to get the ball. They want to feel like they're helping the team win. I just find this one unique, Kyle, because if you don't remember, A.J. Brown was so happy when he got traded to Philly.
They're homies.
Him and Jalen Hurts are supposed to be best friends.
Yes.
Like, they talked about it. I think A.J. Brown, even in the offseason before Jalen Hurts got paid, said, if Howie doesn't pay Jalen Hurts this offseason, go ahead and send me to wherever you're sending him, because I'm going to leave with my friend. And sometimes that's an issue. Like, when your close friend or best friend is indicative of how you do your job, that's a thin line right there, right? So, like, I go back to a former Eagles team, 2004, T.O., Donovan McNabb, right? And they weren't the best of friends, but obviously there was some tension between those two. But they still made a run all the way to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Even with T.O. getting hurt that year. Remember, that was the horse collar year.
Broken leg.
They essentially made the rule for horse collar tackle. But even in that Super Bowl, Donovan McNabb threw for over 300 yards, right? T.O. had 9 catches for 120 yards. So, yes, disputes like this happen all the time. But, yes, players understand you have to be a professional and you got to work some things out. Now, another thing I want to touch about on that clip was, the first thing the reporter asked him is, what can you do to improve the offense? He says passing, short sweep, which we already know puts a bullseye on Jalen Hurts because he's the one throwing the football. But then it was a double down after that. Later on in that interview, they asked him about with the offense, not really getting the passing game going. What conversations happened between you and Jalen Hurts? And he goes, not any conversations really, which is rare because how many times have we panned to the sideline when a receiver is talking to a quarterback trying to get on the same page? Even if there's, some extra energy in the conversation, you like to see those two talking about
like Diggs and Allen.
Yeah, just because you want to get on the same page and both guys are competitive. Now, again, you don't want to show up your quarterback, so you have to do it, be smart about it, right? And be strategic how you talk to your quarterback, right? Because that is the guy getting you the football. But I think it's something to be said that they're not even talking on the sideline about it. And I'm going to have Harry run one more clip. Brandon Graham is a guy that's been with the Eagles his whole career.
Everybody loves
14,
BG.
15 years. And Brandon Graham can be very honest and too honest sometimes. So I'm going to show this clip. Harry going to roll the clip of Brandon Graham talking about the situation between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts.
I know that one is trying. And, 11 could be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed. And I understand that because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business. And that's what we got to do better as right now.
Yeah, so to me, that's a little different, right? Because when you look at Donovan and T.O., they weren't best of friends, right, coming into this scenario. It was a business arrangement, right? And the thing is, I think BG literally antiquated that perfectly. Like, you have to separate the personal from the business, and you worry because they are so close. Will this affect the business side of things? Now, Kyle, we've seen multiple disagreements between teammates, and at the end of the day, we all know that this is a business, right? We have to be professional. We can go out there and do our jobs. As long as there's a line of respect, like, things will get worked out. Right now, this one seems a little bit concerning because when Brandon Graham, who again is a captain on this team, has respect from everybody on this team, says when he's talking about 1 and 11, obviously he's talking about the numbers of Jalen Hurts and also A.J. Brown. He's saying that, they were friends, but I don't know if it's like that anymore.
Things have changed.
Things have changed, which makes you a little nervous just because, again, you got to separate the personal from the business. And I think they will be able to get this thing done. I would not be surprised the next game out if A.J. Brown gets 11 targets, right? Because Nick Sirianni's going to talk to Kellen Moore, and we got to get this.
All right, buddy. You want more passes?
We got to get this guy going, right? But it is a little bit concerning because they do have a close relationship.
And there's levels to this shit as it pertains to the quarterback with which comes, is under question. So, for example, if there's a disconnect in Kansas City, that, you know that the guy, Patrick Mahomes, is going to be okay.
Correct.
And you know that he's going to be able to figure it out. The issue with Jalen Hurts is that he doesn't fall in that top echelon of quarterbacks. And for a guy like A.J. Brown, he feels like he is one of these top echelon wide receivers. What's the issue? We've got the best running back in football. We got the best offensive line in football. Our running game has been potent and explosive, which should lead to an explosive passing game as well. I understand the frustration for A.J. Brown. And one thing that's unique about the receiver position, it's not like when I'm an offensive lineman and we run to the left, I want him to run to the right, to my side. I'm the right guard. I want the highlight to be right behind my ass cheek, like Penei Sewell. Okay, I want to be on SportsCenter. Everybody wants to be on SportsCenter. But I don't have to run 50 yards when the ball doesn't go my way. A.J. Brown has to run 9 routes. He's got to run deep overs. He's got to run corners. And imagine running 60 times a game and not getting the football. I'd be pissed off too. Thanks. But you know what? That's understandable. But what's not understandable is if this is your buddy, you got to find a way to go and communicate. It's like a marriage. It's like a relationship. You're engaged. You got a beautiful fiance. You guys have to talk it out about some stuff, I'm sure. And when you don't, it doesn't get any better, right?
Facts.
So let's talk it out. I feel like that's number one. And they're doing all this talking in the media. Man. Let's close the doors and talk. Let's close the doors a little bit and talk. And then roll it out there on Sunday and let A.J. Brown get 150 yards on 10 catches.
There is something, though, about wide receiver quarterback relationship that's unique, even within an NFL locker room, because I think it's like the only positional group that is solely dependent on one other positional.
Correct.
Right? Like a wide receiver gets paid based solely off of
O-line and quarterback.
Well, yeah, but like mainly the quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, is that guy
quarterback has to throw it to him?
So if you go to we talk about it like in the draft, if you go and you're drafted by a team that's super run heavy and doesn't have a good quarterback, it's just like your earning potential is less than if you get drafted by, say, the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you have Joe Burrow there throwing you the football. It just is, unfortunately. So A.J. Brown, he's not necessarily like in a contract year. He's actually signed through like 2028 at this point for the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's not really like it's costing him money to not produce on the football field, but it's still private at that point. And it's still, again, it's one guy that if he's not playing well, Jalen Hurts, and not finding you, you could do your job as good as humanly possible.
Doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
Yeah.
Every other position on the football field, that's not really the case. Like you get paid based off of what you do on a play in and play out basis. Fortunately for wide receivers, it ain't that simple.
What's your level of concern moving forward for this unit?
So like people had that concern with Nick Sirianni in the beginning, and I kept telling everybody, pump your brakes. Like,
well, they're like 8-0 since he shaved his head like Britney Spears. So
I think they'll figure it out. I'm with you though. Like that was my biggest concern. Like, why are we talking about this in front of the media? Like, if that is your close friend,
and BG is an OG, he understands.
So I was going to talk about him, but AJ Brown first. Like, if that's your close friend, like talk to him on the side.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, BG alluded to it. Maybe they're not as close anymore. But that's still a conversation. Even professional wise, like you can still talk to him on the side, even if y'all aren't as close anymore. And BG, again, you're the captain of this team. You know better than to air that dirty laundry out because now AJ and Jalen have to answer those questions every single day now. We always had a rule, right, Kyle? Do not be a distraction to the locker room. This has caused a distraction because two players went to the media and talked about it. Like, people had been talking about it a little bit in the media and A.J. Brown not getting involved, but it wasn't a over, like, bearing concerning thing because the Eagles were still winning games, right? They were like an 8-9 game win streak, so nobody was really talking about it. And clearly, yes, A.J. Brown was frustrated, so people are going to mention it, but it wouldn't have took it to where it is now if you didn't say passing and then also double down and say, well, we really don't talk about it on the sideline. And then you have the OG, Brandon Graham, coming out and saying, one is trying his best. AJ could, handle it a little bit different. You didn't have to say any of that. It's just like our offense is working through some things. They'll get it together, right? Sometimes chemistry falls off between players. You just got to work through some things. That's all you had to say. And nobody would probably ask about it for the rest of the year. Because, again, it's one thing if they were losing, but they're winning games. Yeah. So that's why, nobody would have made a big hoopla about it. But now, obviously, everybody's going to talk about it throughout this whole week.
When I was playing, we got Akeem Hicks in free agency. Mm-hmm. And this was at, the height of Akeem Hicks like he was
first off the Saints, right?
He was Godzilla. Yeah. I mean, literally. And I remember there was a stretch for about 3 or 4 years where I didn't break a sweat in practice. And then Akeem Hicks showed up. and that was my matchup every day. And, you know, in large part due to Akeem Hicks, my body was just so beat up because I didn't want to lose to him. He didn't want to lose to me. And we were on the field fighting a literal war every day. But when we went back into the locker room, we could sit next to each other, pack a dip out of the same can, laugh a little bit about the practice. But what I'm going to get to with this Akeem Hicks thing is I started dealing with injuries after he came in, and Akeem's trajectory went towards all pro. Yeah. And I remember I was really frustrated and embarrassed. And sometimes I would take it out on some of the younger guys that were in the room, scout team, defensive linemen. Yeah. I'd hit them late, do something dirty. And that's not me. And Akeem Hicks brought me to the side privately in the locker room. And he said, look, I'm in the room with these guys. A lot of these guys look up to you. When you do stuff like that, this is what it does. And this is how it makes them feel. And I can only imagine that bleeds into the other position rooms. And I remember how important it was for me that Akeem pulled me to the side and was like, you're a dude. Like, don't forget that. For sure. But also, these are guys that are become dudes based on what the leaders in the room are doing, which you are one of. And for A.J. Brown, I would urge him to understand that he is the leader in that room. Like we talk about George Pickens being the most talented guy on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. As he goes mentally, the team will go. Right. And I think that for a guy like A.J. Brown, you need to find a way to get with Jalen Hurts, handle this thing privately. It will be priceless. You will never forget it because you could go on a run that will be historic. You could be the second world champion Eagles, and you guys are the biggest part of that. So handle it in-house. And I think that's the best bet.
Very well said. Very well said. All right. Kyle, what's your deep dive?
My deep dive today is going to be former players that become coaches. More specifically, it's our guy, the local product, Teddy Bridgewater. Hey. Teddy Bridgewater had one of the most gruesome injuries that has ever happened in the National Football League. I remember the day that it happened, it went through the league like a ripple effect. Man. This was at the beginning of social media and everything. And now Teddy Bridgewater is a coach. And I want to make sure that I get the name of his school correct here because Teddy Bridgewater, he's Northwest Miami. It's a 3A high school football team around here. You're a Florida guy. Yeah. Miami Northwestern.
I was going to say it's Miami Northwestern.
Miami Northwestern.
Yeah. So how does Florida do A's? Is 3A is 1A the biggest?
1A is the lowest.
It goes up to 5, right? 5, right. So there's 2 above it. Okay. But Teddy Bridgewater has become the head coach for this Miami Northwestern team. And they are an absolute powerhouse.
Yeah, they always have been.
I feel like they got to be even more because we looked at the points for, the points against. It's 220-12 in the playoffs for Teddy Bridgewater's team. I wanted to talk to you guys about any time that you have dealt with former players that are coaches versus coaches that are lifelong coaches and the impact it has. Because if I'm a young kid and Teddy Bridgewater shows up to my school, I understand that we have a very unique opportunity. Right. Obviously, we have the scheme. We've got a guy who's been there and done it, a guy that would still be playing today and probably be a starter in the National Football League, but he's here with us. And how important that is for these young men because we're looking at the schedule. If the game's not in Jacksonville this Friday, I'm going to try to go to it.
Down here,
I'd love to go watch Teddy Bridgewater coach, man. I love how that picture right there is what the best coaches look like now. And I freaking love that because when I go back in time, the coaches don't look like Teddy Bridgewater. And for a lot of guys, they need a guy like Teddy Bridgewater to relate to. And I freaking love that, man. I love that shit so much. I'm so happy for Teddy Bridgewater, a guy whose career was robbed from him due to injury. He has made lemonade out of lemons, man. Yeah. Or you know what? Orange juice out of oranges because we're in Florida. That's what I'm going to say. You have some experience with Teddy Bridgewater?
Yeah, that's my guy. We trained down here, have the same trainer in Sharif Tabah in regards to like physical therapy and everything. I call him Brook Shot Teddy off of the movie. So excited for him and what he's doing. I remember he told me when he was thinking about getting into coaching, and then because he literally could still be playing in the league right now, right? But decided to leave and go back to his hometown. He played for this school, so it means a lot to
him. That's awesome.
So he's a local hero, essentially, right? And the discipline he's been able to bring to that program. They always had the talent down here. You know, Miami's a hotbed of talent, especially Miami Northwest. Tutu Atwell went there. A lot of different athletes went there. Teddy went there. So a lot of guys that played in the league went to that school.
This is a school I knew about, and I'm a private school kid from Virginia.
Yeah. So they put out talent year in and year out. And like they take it serious down there. Like, you don't want to have a losing record at Miami Northwestern because it doesn't bode well in the community, right? Because they have a long, with outstanding, prideful history in regards to winning state championships or always having deep runs in the playoffs. And you just talked about this, right? How having a ex-player, how it can be relatable for current players. And I think that's set so perfectly because when you look at the Detroit Lions, and for the longest, even when Dan Campbell and them were struggling his first couple of years, first year and a half, I said, I hope they turn this around. Because when you look at the staff, it's predominantly all ex-players. Mm-hmm. And who's more relatable to players that are currently playing than guys that went through the same thing that they went through? And it's guys that are in positions, whether it's Calvin Shepard, the linebacker coach who played linebacker, Dan Campbell, who's just a leader of men who played tight end. But there's a reason why at multiple stops he was named the interim coach because they know what type of leader he is. Yep. Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, who was a Pro Bowl quarterback. Just dudes, right? Hank Farley, an offensive lineman. Like, these guys played the game at a high level. So this is the reason why the players respect them. Perfect example. I don't know if you saw the clip of Antoine Randall L. just going off on Jamison.
Yes.
After the penalty.
He's like,
and Jamison, shut up. Yeah. Right? That lets you know the players have respect for those dudes, man, because those dudes laid it on the line as players, but they put the work in as coaches too. And those players trust them. I mean, you hear it after every victory speech when, you know, Dan Campbell gives a game ball away, how those players just love the team. That's the first thing they say, right? Man, I love this team.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really be
chills
on this run
thinking about it.
Anybody else. Tim Patrick is a perfect example, right? Been through 2 massive knee injuries, right? Gets to Detroit practice squad, they elevate him, and he's fit right in with his mindset and the way he plays and how gritty he is.
It was a 3-year touchdown drought. Then he goes and catches 2 in the biggest game of the season.
Exactly. So, like, that was the first thing he said. He was just like, man, it's been a trying 2.5 years, and I wouldn't want to be on this run with anybody else. I really, truly appreciate how you guys accepted me, right? And you let me come into this culture. That just lets you know, right, to your point, right, when you have coaches that were former players, those guys are relatable to the players, and those players are willing to run through a brick wall for them.
And they're not going to ask you to do anything that can't be done or that they haven't done before. And when I first started playing football, I have a younger brother, Howie. He's 12 months and a couple days younger than me. He went from JV to varsity his sophomore year. He was slated to become the quarterback. And my dad was like, hey, I think it might be time for you to try football. I hadn't really played at all. I played in the backyard and on the blacktop. And I said, I'm not going to know, how are these guys going to teach me how to play football? He's like, don't worry, I'll be at practice. My dad went to practice Monday through Thursday and Fridays. He was in the stands with everybody else. He didn't want to bother us. And I remember being in a spot where I was like, I can't do this. And having a guy like that, it's akin to having a guy like Teddy Bridgewater there coaching you if you're a quarterback at Miami Northwestern. For a fact that he's not going to put anything on your plate that A, you can't handle, B, isn't correct, and C, isn't going to be good for you. And when I got to the NFL, the guy who drafted me was offensive line coach Aaron Cromer. He's the Bills offensive line coach now. I talk about him a lot, and I talk about him glowingly. Because of the experiences I had with him, it felt like there was just a salty old vet that was our O-line coach. And you could listen to him and you could trust him and he's going to make your game better. I'll take it a step even further. That guy right there on the screen, Teddy Bridgewater, looks nothing like Andy Reid, but they're the same. Andy Reid and Teddy Bridgewater are the same. And stick with me for a minute. Andy Reid was an offensive lineman. You know what I mean? He played the game. He's a really bright guy. I trust what he has to say. He finds a way to connect the locker room in a way that I would imagine Teddy Bridgewater does. And I think it's important for the game of football, for all the things that you've said about these staff members being former players. Guys just tend to listen to them. Right. I could have an O-line coach who knows all the X's and O's, who knows all the scheme, who knows all the pressures. But if I know that you've never done it,
man,
I'm probably going to be a little bit less inclined to do everything that you say to do. I might try to do it my way. But if a guy like that tells me to do something, if he says jump, I say, how high, Coach Bridge? How high?
There's also a level of insight that if you didn't play at that level or even just didn't play the position,
correct,
you just can't have. Like I know my girls asked me if I ever want to get into coaching. I was like, she's like, you're a good communicator. You could do it. I'm like, I don't have the insight. I did not play at a level of football that
you need to be a general manager
would be able to let me sit up in front of or stand in front of, men and say, here's how you should do it. I would feel like a fraud doing that because I don't have that. And I do think that you just look at any roster, if we go back to the NFL, any coaching staff, there are numerous guys on staff outside of teams like the Lions that are coaching a position that they at no point ever played in their life.
Oh my God.
And maybe never even played the sport.
And it's frequent. Like it's crazy how frequent.
More often than not, it's a guy that didn't play the position.
Which is crazy, right? Because there's a caveat to that, right? Now, if you played and you're coaching the opposite side, that's one thing, because now you're thinking about it backwards. Yep. We talked about that before.
My dad taught me how to play O-line because he knows what O-line or D-lineman hated.
Perfect example, Mike Tomlin. He was a receiver in college.
Yes.
But he's one of the best defensive minds.
William and Mary?
William and Mary. He went there with Sean McDermott.
Go Tribe.
Yeah, he went there with Sean McDermott. But he's one of the best defensive minds because he knows what the offense is thinking, right? So you can kind of mitigate what they want to do based on their train of thinking because he grew up in that way of thinking. So like, let me show you how to mitigate what they want to do on offense. So there's a caveat to that. Like if you played the game at a high level and you're coaching another position, I still have some respect for you because you learned it. But if like you've never played the game, I'm with you 100%. Like I've had coaches that have told me to do certain things, and I asked them, show me on tape somebody doing it. And if you can't show me on tape somebody doing it, that means for one, it hasn't been done yet, which doesn't bode well. Because what do we always talk about? I have had to seen it before, right? We don't want the exception. We want the rule. And then two, you don't know what you're talking about, right? So like, I think to Kyle's point, it's always something to be said when a guy has actually been through those trenches with you and done what you've done. Like you're just more keen to listen to them because they've done it at a high level.
Like rookie year, when I got drafted by the Bears, Aaron Cromer had just come from the Saints, and this was like the Super Bowl Saints, and their offensive line on the inside was Carl Nix, Jari Evans.
Oh my goodness.
Now if a guy that never played O-line drafted me and brought me a DVD and said, do what these guys are doing, I would say, you're out of your fucking mind.
Those dudes were born like that.
Hey, you're out of your mind. But when Aaron Cromer looks you in the eye and says, trust me, you can do this kind of stuff. Now, you might not be able to do it like to the certain extent that they're doing it, but you can play this brand of football. You trust it, you latch onto it, it becomes your gospel. And I would imagine for these kids at Miami Northwestern, that's their gospel. Teddy Bridgewater is preaching every day.
Let's get to my deep dive here. I just want to touch on, since we're towards the end of the season, we have a good idea of where the quarterback position has shaken out for a number of franchises. So we're going to get to a little quarterback musical chairs for the offseason as always happens. Because I right now have pegged 7 teams. Like there are 7 teams that are in the quarterback market in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And you can debate how needy each one is, but for certain, the Jets, Raiders, Steelers, Browns, Giants. There's 5 teams that like 100,000%.
200,000.
They will be the quarterback.
They're shopping.
Titans, Saints, they're on the fence right now. Obviously, Derek Carr is going to be on a contract, but he just had an injury this past week.
It's time for them to clear house over
It's
there.
very much time for them to look elsewhere at the position. And then the Tennessee Titans, you've had this sort of really up and down play from Will Levis. He plays a style of football that's conducive to injury, and well, lo and behold, he keeps getting injured.
He plays varsity blues quarterback. Like he's always going to end up injured.
So there are your teams that for certain need one. Truthfully, that's a fairly low number, I think, by NFL standards heading into an offseason. But also there's a fairly low number of guys to fill those voids. That
is true.
2 quarterbacks in the draft. We keep saying that: Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. After that, I doubt there's going to be anyone that anyone's going to covet at a franchise quarterback level. Obviously, some games to be played at, but I think that's it. 3 quarterbacks, I think, that have played well enough that are heading into free agency that likely get looks: Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston. But then after that, so that's 5 with 7 teams. We have 2 extra spots. After that, it gets hairy. You could either, I have 2 other groups here. We have former first rounders that you could rehab.
Justin Fields,
Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, who's New York Jets.
Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. I forgot about
His
those
New York
guys.
Jets final season looks a lot better in retrospect.
Oh, no question.
And he's gone to
be praying for Zach Wilson right now.
He's gone to a quarterback whisperer in Sean Payton. So
he has been hiding in there.
He may be the Sam Darnold flavor du jour. And then you have Trey Lance, who, if he can't start with Cooper Rush right now, may not be getting that sort of look. But those are your first-round rehabs. Then you have your veteran quarterback basically forfeiting a season starters. Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, Jimmy G. And then you have the enigma is in his own tier of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering where you're going to put him.
He's in his own tier. He's none of those tiers at this point. And that's how he wants it to be.
Yeah.
So of those 7, again, Jets, Raiders, Steelers, Browns, Giants, Titans, Saints, I think we can safely say that, or just predict, Steelers goes Russell Wilson. Like
I think they resign him.
They will do what they can to keep Russell Wilson after what he's done.
Keep the train moving.
And with what they did, having to go to Kenny Pickett after Ben Roethlisberger, like they don't want to go through any of that.
They still might
anytime soon.
Sam Darnold locking in?
I don't think so.
That's the question mark. Because if Sam Darnold's not, then also I don't know where he would necessarily go. But at this point,
back to the Jets,
Niners. No, well, Brock's going to make.
Brock's going to be there.
So Darnold, Winston. Do we think Winston stays with Cleveland?
I think he stays there too.
I think they've spent so much money on that quarterback position. They got to just ride out the deal.
That they'll just.
No, I think they're going to eat that money this year. There's
so you
no
think
way.
Jameis Winston's the starting quarterback week 1?
I think it's an open competition in training camp. There's no way you can go into training camp and look every other player in their face and say we're legitimately trying to win.
They have to get
and not make it an open.
If you're not taking yourself seriously in your own building, then you're going to have problems. There's going to be people asking questions about the quarterback position. But if
guys
you see that it's 50-50 split in training camp,
then you're like,
Jameis is balling. Okay, we're on the right path here.
Correct.
We can strike out Raiders, Giants. Right now, they're 1-2.
They're going to take the 2 quarterbacks.
Shador's going to be a Raider.
Steelers 2 and call them Russell Wilson.
Okay,
so that leaves us Jets, Browns,
Titans,
Saints, Titans.
It all depends on who the coach is in New York next year.
Okay,
for the Jets. Because I could see Zach Wilson going back to New York.
No, there's no way he's going back to New York. I mean, the Sam Darnold one is intriguing, right? Because they drafted J.J. McCarthy, but it's just like, is this going to be a Paxton Lynch situation where like he just has to stay on the bench because you resign? And the thing is, do they have the money allotted to sign Sam? Because he's going to probably be the highest free agent. Out of everybody, not just like quarterback, every position because of how he's played. So maybe a team like the Browns does maybe try to, I mean, I guess a lot of money. Maybe the Saints try to, you just never know. The Titans could potentially throw some money at him.
When things are right around Derek Carr, I like Derek Carr. When things are right around Derek Carr, but it has to be.
I'm a big fan of Derek Carr, but
I
think the ceiling is what it is at this point in his career.
He's dealt with a lot of injuries this year. To your point, I mean, are you going to be able to invest in a guy who you don't know if he's going to be out there for 50% of the games?
I mean, you're a franchise quarterback. You got to be smart. Like, I'm all about the competitive nature.
Yeah.
But if you're not in that lineup, you guys most likely aren't going to win the game.
Yeah.
Like, you have to protect yourself. Again, I love his competitive nature, but diving head first, 5 feet in the air is just not conducive to a safe play for a quarterback that you need to be out there to get the reps with the offense.
So Carr's cap numbers. $51 million.
This is what happens when you keep kicking the can down the road.
51 mil.
61.5 the year after that. If they were to cut him,
I was going to say, what's
June 1, they could get $30 million in cap relief next year. Obviously, then that would spill some of that cap hit into 2026.
Correct.
But
so they can split that up. That's only about $10 million a year.
Don't tell Mark Gastineau how much this guy's making.
And you've already kind of cut bait with Marshawn Lattimore. If you're already willing to move
just
on,
clear the house, man.
I think it's time to just say, Carr, you had your chance to turn things around. It didn't work out. I think you got to clear as much space as humanly possible next year.
Do you think the Steelers just keep the same quarterback room?
That's a possibility.
And re-sign Fields.
Yeah.
I think Fields wants to start.
I was going to say, if I'm Fields, I'm going somewhere where I can actually compete to start, though.
I think of that tier, he's the most likely of that rehab round 1. He's the most likely to earn a job from that tier. Like,
he's intriguing because if the Jets don't end up getting a top 2 pick, right? Which means, and me and Mike have put this out there that we think Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are the only true first-round picks in this quarterback class. Justin Fields is intriguing to the Jets, depending on who the offensive coordinator is.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the big question.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like, so new GM, new coach comes in. I would assume at this point, I know Aaron has said he would potentially like to come back. I don't think he'll be there next year.
Yeah.
Tyrod's under contract for another year. I could see this being a scenario where they take a Justin Fields, bring him in free agency, compete with Tyrod as the bridge quarterbacks, and still potentially draft somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round, right? As a guy that maybe you can develop for a year or two and make him the starter. So I think Justin Fields to the Jets is very intriguing this offseason.
So is Darnold, put your little,
GM
projection hat on here. Is Darnold going to be a Viking next year? And if he's not,
midway through the season, I would have said no. At this point, you've lost 2 games with him.
Yeah.
And you're winning because of him now.
Yeah. It's like, sure, JJ McCarthy might be awesome, and that would be a great problem to have.
Correct.
But if he's only going to cost you, because he's not going to break the bank, right? It's not
like Baker Mayfield type deal.
Yeah. If he's only going to cost you $35 million a year, and it's going to be probably one of those backloaded-ish contracts in that, I think you got to do it. It's like, why are you passing up?
Let's say they don't
11-2 for the opportunity that JJ McCarthy might be the guy.
Let's say the number's too big.
Better run with a cheaper roster. You can make a bigger run if JJ McCarthy really hits big. And they'll obviously be the best team to know that in terms of they've seen them, they know the quarterbacks. But I don't see why you wouldn't want that, even if it's just for like a backup guy on the roster in case JJ McCarthy gets hurt or something like that.
Because if they go in a different direction with Sam Darnold, it obviously helps their checkbook a good amount. They get their guy on the rookie deal to be the starter. If I'm Justin Fields and I know that I can play till I'm 35, well, why wouldn't you go to a place like Minnesota and sign up to be a backup for a year and go to that college of football for a little bit under Kevin O'Connell's tutelage? I don't know.
To me, the most intriguing spot for Fields is the Saints, if the Saints do cut Derek Carr, because of the talent they have there.
What they're built to do,
kind of that offense, what they're built to do, whether it's Taysom Hill, who's an awesome, whatever he
Weapon
is.
X,
and then you have vertical threats, which like Justin Fields,
they can stay healthy.
He can throw down the football. Yeah. But even their Mason Tipton is like a vertical. Like every
correct.
single guy there is just like a
Jawan Johnson can stretch down the seam.
So it is just like a vertically based offense.
Yeah.
Regardless of who's your OC, because that's the talent you have.
Heavy runs, vertical passes.
That's Justin Fields. Yeah. So I think if there anywhere would rehab his stock, that would probably be the best spot for
I think Rizzi gets a real opportunity to be the head coach.
Oh, he's been great. I mean, he did explode on the sideline the other day. That was fun.
I mean, they played really well since he's taken over as head coach.
Yeah. And not only that, we've seen some of these interim head coaches have lackluster performances in the room that they were in. So like Ulbrich, his defense kind of fell apart. Saleh and his defense fell apart.
I'm so glad you brought that.
But Rizzi, his special teams unit has won them some football games.
Yeah.
Like just last week, we saw a blocked field goal against the New York Giants to put them out of their misery. And that's awesome to see that a group is fighting for their coach, particularly the unit that he came from, that special teams unit. So to your point, I mean, I could see it happening. They're going to have to make a lot more changes than just the coach in the New Orleans Saints organization.
I know we got to move on to our mailbag, but I had this conversation the other day. I'm so glad you brought up Jeff Ulbrich, because for the life of me, I don't understand when owners decide to relieve the current head coach of his duties. Why do they pick a coordinator to be the head coach? Because when you look at it, and if you look at even the history of teams that have been able to turn things around, let's just go back to last year. Antonio Pierce, he was the linebackers coach, right? When you're a position coach, like you can still be the head coach and the position coach, because like when you're just focused on one position and not the whole defense, it's not as much on your plate. But when you're the coordinator to a whole side of the football, and again, I get it with Rizzi, you got to think for special teams, you're probably up every 4 plays, maybe 6 plays, maybe 8 plays. But when you're on offense and defense, there's like 8 to 10 plays you got to go straight through. And then as a head coach, if you're that coordinator and the head coach, now you got to pay attention to the other side of the ball. So when you need to be making adjustments and changes, it's hard to do that. Where when you're Rizzi, for the special teams play, like there could be like 6 or 7 plays in between. So you can do your adjustments real quick and then get back to special teams. But like when you're Jeff Ulbrich and you're one of the better coaches on the staff and you're just locked into the defense, and now there's more responsibility on your plate, it affects what the defense does. Thomas Brown, the same thing. I mean, this man went from running back to offensive coordinator. The offense started looking good. All right, let's throw some more on this play by making him the head coach. What happened to the offense? It fell apart.
I don't want to talk about
it's because I've never understood why you would make a coordinator your head coach. Now, again, yes, this probably could be a good opportunity, but you're literally putting them up against the 8-ball by doing this because it's not going to show them in the best light because they're so focused on one side of the ball that now you're taking so much responsibility and dumping it on their lap that it affects that side of the ball that they're coaching.
So special teams coordinators are the perfect coordinator to be the interim head coach because you know what's unique about the special teams meeting, Mike?
With everybody.
What? Yeah.
It's with everybody.
Hey, it's offense, it's defense, it's big guys, it's little guys. The special teams meeting is a de facto team meeting.
It really is.
So a guy like Riz has the pulse of the entire team. He has that connection with these guys. To your point, like when we saw Chris Tabor become the guy in Carolina, I was like, I could see this working out, because he deals with every single one of these guys. And he doesn't have a ton on his plate.
All right, let's get to a quick break. Then we're going to do our mailbag segment for this week.
Historic rivals with unforgettable seasons meet in a game of honor. The Army-Navy game presented by USAA, December 14th on CBS.
I was just we were showing the Army-Navy intro. He said that's a bucket list item. Want to go see that, and obviously we'd all love to go see that. But if you don't follow Leger on social media, he is such a Florida boy, and when he goes up to these winter football games, you just are covered
head to toe,
gloves, scarf, hat,
I need it
jacket,
3 jackets. I literally was just at West Point, which is another bucket list item. My dad was in the Army, so I always wanted to go to West Point for the American Athletic Conference Championship game versus Tulane. And to Kyle's point, I was out there doing the pregame show, and I literally had gloves on. I had a heated vest. I had a heated hat.
You were sweating.
Heated gloves. At one point I had to take one jacket off because it was hot, and then 2 jackets on top of that. But to my defense, it was 27 degrees, but with wind chill was 15.
And gray.
Oh, it was freezing.
Yeah.
It was freezing, bro. But it was a great experience.
I was at the 2007 NFC Championship game where it was negative 13 or something.
Oh, no, sir.
Bay, New York.
Oh, no, sir.
I played in a game like that Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. Jason Hatcher told me on the 3rd play of the game, he was like, stop touching me.
I'm bad. Let's make this look good.
I was like, Hatch, my bad. He's like, no, for real. Stop touching me.
Let's make this look good.
Tony Romo went down like Brett Favre a couple times in that game.
Oh, man.
Took a couple
when it's that cold and you get hit, bro.
Yeah. Shout out to Soldier Field in the wintertime, baby.
Yeah.
All right, mailbag. Speaking of, you own the Chicago Bears. Someone, Ken Mitchell. He says, you own the Chicago Bears and get to decide where the new stadium goes.
Ooh.
Do you choose a city-owned stadium downtown, club-owned facility in Arlington Heights, or something else entirely, dome or no dome? You obviously just no dome if you're shouting out Chicago Bears.
You have to go retractable. You have to go club-owned, and I would imagine that the right option is Arlington Heights at the old racetrack because you have the opportunity to make the Chicago Bears football scene the biggest destination in football. When I look at SoFi, when I look at Allegiant, when I look at some of these stadiums that are destinations, what else do you have in conjunction with football? You get events, you get, concerts, you get Formula One races, you get everything under the sun. We need to bring back the shine to the Chicago Bears, and I think it could start. You could turn over a new leaf with a brand new stadium. And the key word is this: city. The key phrase is city owned. Soldier Field is city owned. So by the time that the Chicago Bears take the field on Sunday, there has been a Pop Warner game on Thursday, 2 high school games on Friday,
Concert
an
on
EDM
Saturday.
Concert on Saturday.
Festival.
A festival, bunch of freaks running around on our field. I remember I had a tweet. I was like, get these freaks off the field. And I got killed by people. And they're like, I'd rather go to an EDM festival than watch your shitty Bears any day of the week.
Oh, my goodness.
But at the end of the day, that's what happens when you have a city-owned thing. And you roll out there on Sunday, the surface is bad. It's not a good look. I love Soldier Field. It is one of the crown jewels in the National Football League. But we don't have the benefit of like Lambeau Field, where you're not in a giant city. Like, people take such pride in Lambeau Field. I can't tell you the last time I saw people from Chicago go and clean up the stadium or take care of the grass or protect the sanctity of the property. If you get to start fresh in Arlington Heights and you do a retractable dome, I'd open it up for football games. I'd close it for events. And you have now a cash cow that is in your back pocket. I'm not sure what they would name it. It would be a lot of fun. And also, it's closer to Lake Forest, where the training facility is. The guys don't have to go to the city, which I think tweaks the margins on performance, because when you got guys going down to the city, hour drive back, you're running late nights, you're running early mornings. When the stadium's right there in Arlington Heights, you can get home, get in bed, get ready to work the next day. I don't know. I've always liked the thought of Arlington Heights.
I will say there's something that hits different as a fan about a downtown stadium.
Yeah.
That it's... I remember I lived within walking distance of Soldier Field. I lived within walking distance of Paul Brown in Cincinnati. And it's awesome to be able to walk to a game. But the thing about Soldier Field,
there's not enough space.
It's a disaster to get to games, though.
Not enough space.
It's walking distance, but it's like a mile and a half for every single person, no matter how close you are to it, because of where it's located. It's like tucked behind the highway. So driving to it, getting to it, in and out is horrendous for
train
fans.
line, Navy train line to Arlington Heights, Orange train line to Arlington Heights.
With just the setup they have now, if you're building it in that location, no. If you're building it up by where's the Lincoln Park, where's that like big space, the yards that they have that they were debating building it there, that's like a real location that
it can't be in its current situation.
It cannot be where it is right now.
It's so congested, dude. It is so congested down there. I want this thing to be like the eighth wonder of the world when they build it, because that's what you will get in return. You will get people showing up from miles up. You think there's Bear fans everywhere right now? Wait till you see how many people show up when you build a brand new stadium.
You are the largest uncontested football market in the country.
Yep.
To have the smallest stadium that they have is a joke. It's a joke.
I wouldn't say it's a joke, Mike.
I think it's a joke. I mean, it's like indicative.
It's not good,
of how that franchise is run. Right?
It's not good, because you go to these other stadiums, you show up to Glendale, Arizona, and you play in an absolute spaceship. You go to Dallas to Jerry's World, and you're like, my God, they own this place?
Yeah,
like, this is
not real.
Jerry Jones' place? You go to SoFi Stadium, and that's Kroenke, right? And you're like, this is what Big Bread does. I think it would inflate the value of the Chicago Bears exponentially.
All right, next question comes from KJ on X. He actually has a video to go along with it. He wants Kyle's thoughts on this type of stuff. It's a hit from Micah Parsons on Joe Burrow. If you haven't seen it, if you're not watching live, go check it out on X. But it was a little late hit, up high. He wants to know, Joe Burrow is a super likable guy by all accounts, but his teammates' actions or lack thereof make it seem like he's Deshaun Watson. No one going and protecting him after a play like this.
It was a love tap.
Number one,
that would seem pretty.
Number one, it wasn't too bad. Number two, I would have been the first guy to run over there and give Micah, the time of day.
Well, talking to,
because I would say this: there's a handful of guys that you don't want to go and get into an extra mode. You don't want them to find an extra gear. And I remember playing against Ndamukong Suh. I remember playing against Aaron Donald. I remember playing Von Miller, Khalil Mack. There's a list of guys where you have that meeting with the group before the game and you say, that is not your matchup.
Don't talk trash to him.
Don't touch him. Don't talk to him.
Talk trash to him.
Don't even look at the bastard, because you know what? I got to block him or try to. And if you get Micah Parsons pissed off, if you hit him late, you're going to find a little bit extra juice from that guy. And then we're all in trouble. So in that, it's a rare situation. But if it's a guy, if it's number 92, a guy that we don't even know his last name, we got to go hit him. Joe Burrow, the guys love him. It's comical that you would put Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow in the same sentence. Next question, please.
All right. Someone, who is this on X? Morgan McGuire wants to know who are the top 5 wide receivers in the 2025 draft class. Great question. I think Tyrell McMillan, Luther Burden are your 2 first-round wide receivers.
Luther Burden.
It's Tyrell McMillan from Arizona, Luther Burden from Missouri.
Great name.
T-Max, more of like an X outside. He's 6'5", massive wingspan. Luther Burden's more of a slot. Deebo Samuel, get the ball in his hands. He can make plays type. Yeah. After that, it's a lot of guys who I see as like nice number 2s. I don't see like a true number 1 after those 2, or like a true featured guy in an offense after those 2. That's why I say those are the 2 first rounders. But I go Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, Alec Eomanor from Stanford, and then Trey Harris from Ole Miss. I don't know if Eomanor is declared yet. He's only a junior, so he may not. We'll see.
No Travis Hunter on your list?
He didn't have a great year. Travis Hunter.
This is the athlete weapon.
No Travis Hunter on your top receivers list?
I don't honestly, like, when I rank corners and when I rank wide receivers, I always like forget to put him in either. Because I'm just like, oh, he's like his own thing.
Hybrid.
Yeah.
So if I were to put him in it, he would be at worst number 2, probably number 1 though. It's just hard to say.
Take him over T-Mac?
I think he's way more physically gifted than T-Mac. Like, just he's a freak.
He's a freak with the ball.
He has
Travis
not
Hunter
had
the ball,
the ability to focus on one position or the other. Right?
He jumps. He can pause in midair when he jumps.
That's the thing. Is like he just athletically what he can do, attacking the football after the catch. It's like it's all there. He's tired half his routes. It's like you see him.
I don't think people understand how tired he is.
Have the crispness.
For people to say, "Oh, just because he plays both," I'm like, you clearly have never played high competitive football.
Now they've never played running back like Genti either. I mean, that guy gets hit.
I hear that,
but when you're playing both sides of the ball, man,
and not missing any snaps.
Oh my!
That actually leads us into another good question from Monty here. He says, "How much do you think Travis Hunter's positional versatility is actually bumping up his draft stock? Do you think NFL teams could actually use him as a weapon on both sides?" I mean, it's helping. It's a big part of it, right?
Correct.
But it's kind of what I just said in that he's doing what he's doing tired. Yeah. He's doing what he's doing not at 100%. You just can't.
Imagine if he waits 12 minutes before a series.
Oh, yes.
My God.
You physically cannot give 100% every single snap. I don't care.
You're taking 160.
TJ Watt can.
You cannot.
TJ Watt can.
Most people can't even on one side of the football give 100% every single snap. So I do think that's the other thing that's intriguing.
What did I say?
He looks this good when he's tired. What's he going to look like?
When he's like full.
Yes.
Yeah.
Full healthy, full breath.
So I do think that
it'll be interesting to see what his role will be in the league. I think he has to me, he's a Pro Bowl, All-Pro corner. Right. I just think he's a freak of nature when it comes to being a receiver. And you talked about some of the physical tools that he has. Right. He just pucks the ball out of the air, has great ball skills. And you see that on the defensive side as well, especially in zone coverage, the way he's able to decipher, route concepts.
He drives on the football,
attacks the football. I could see it being like almost like a JJ Watt thing where they use him in the red zone.
He was so good at tight end.
Yeah.
Bro.
I can see him using, and then like maybe give him 2 or 3 end arounds a game.
Yes.
Right? But I think he's going to be a starting corner in the league.
I think what people don't understand about these meetings in the pre-draft process is when they bring you in there, and Leger, you've been in a few of these meetings with teams, and they try to get a feel for who you are as a person because they know who you are on tape. They know who you are as a football player. They want to know how much you love football. And when a guy like Travis Hunter is playing big-time D1 college football, he's playing both sides of the ball, you don't even have to ask how much he loves football.
Correct. Not at all.
That is what is bumping up his draft stock, in my opinion, that these coaches are like, this guy's doing this in D1 football. Yep. That's what we call a badass. You know what I mean? He is a badass. And I think more than his skills, the fact that he's doing it like this on both sides of the ball, he never bitches, never complains. He just shows up and plays. NFL coaches, NFL GMs love that stuff.
For sure.
All right, next question from Tom K. He asks, is the NFC now the superior conference? The basement is too crowded in the AFC to hold a Pabst and a Schlitz kegger.
What the hell are those?
Never had Schlitz?
Are those bad words?
It's a Wisconsin beer or Milwaukee beer.
That's not good.
I've never heard of it.
I never heard of those.
Yeah.
Schlitz.
Pabst, PBR.
PBR, that's the one with it's got the blue ribbon on it. I know Fat Tire.
They're not.
You guys do Fat Tire up there in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I've had a Fat Tire. They're not great.
Good stuff. I like Line and Kugel's.
Line and Kugel's rips. Yeah,
Line and Kugel, grapefruit, summer shandy.
Brewery, though.
Ooh, that's a great golf drink.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, when you're sweating, you get that grapefruit in you. It's nice.
Nothing wrong with that.
All right. So are they Spirit Conference? My take is that I think there's some great run teams in the NFC right now, whether it's the Eagles, whether it's the NFC North, truthfully, whether it's the Buccaneers, Seahawks, obviously, with what they've done over decades.
The Jedis are in the AFC,
Rams
though.
as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of good GMs in the NFC, but the QBs.
The Jedis.
I mean, the QB difference is just if you're just
that is true.
it's so insane, the difference.
And that matters.
And it does matter.
matters.
So I do think that because of that, I don't think they are. But if you're just ranking like the organizational stabilities, NFC, yes. And there is an underclass that's pretty evident right now in the AFC. So it's really hard to say because top end, you know, if you're saying who's going to win more Super Bowls over the next 5 years, I'd still bet the AFC.
Yes.
This is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be too interesting, but when you look at the AFC, you talked about the quarterbacks and being the top tier quarterbacks in the league. Who's not making the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, right. I mean,
it's got to be Mahomes not making it, right?
Mahomes doesn't, right? I don't think he can.
He shouldn't have made it last year either.
He's gonna wipe those tears with $1 million bills.
Trying to get another Super Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, at the end of the day, that's what that guy plays for.
He'll film an Allstate commercial instead.
You got Bundle Rooski?
Bundle
Rooski. It's like, I'm not saying that.
My ears. All right.
He didn't cover my ears.
Dude, that every time that one comes on,
And they started showing the outtakes version of it.
It's better because he doesn't say it as
Which
much.
is good.
Yeah.
Which is good.
All right. This one comes from Shades. Last one here. He says, who are your top 5 young DT/NTs in the league right now? What team should we be watching the interior closely? Now, I don't know what qualifies as young. So
I was about to ask that too.
I just did like rookie contracts, guys who are still on the first 4 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
I'd say Jalen Carter 1. Yeah. Ali McNeil 2. He's not
We just got paid
on his rookie contract anymore, but he's in year 4.
Yeah.
So I put him in here. Christian Barmore, forgotten about.
Got paid too.
Hurt. Year 4.
Yeah.
But he's awesome.
Yeah,
so those guys, Milton Williams will get paid.
Somebody need to put respect on his name. He's a dog.
He's been awesome. Keanu Benton, year 2, DT for Steelers. Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then I'd give some shout outs to, and I hate to do this one, but
Trevon Dexter.
Yeah,
let's go. Come here.
It doesn't make the top 5.
I've been waiting for him to say that name all year.
But he's been very impressive. Travis Jones, Kobe Turner, some other
Kobe Turner's got to be on there.
Braden Fisk could join that list. I still worry about him in the run game. He's still, but those are your DTs.
Yeah, I would agree with that list when you're talking about young. And again, the question mark is what's the definition of young? Because Quentin Williams is still only 26 years old.
Yeah, like he's
so like
bless me.
Exactly. So like, what are you saying is young, right? But I like the way that Mike broke it down is in regards to people still on a rookie deal. Now again, Ali McNeil, Christian Barmore just got paid, so they're not technically on a rookie deal, but they got paid before going into free agency. So Ali McNeil, I know people are always saying, with Aiden Hutchinson not being there, is this Detroit defense going to be enough in regards to getting to the quarterback? He's one of those guys that can wreck an offensive scheme from the interior pass rush, right? And he's really showed up big the last few weeks since they lost Aiden Hutchinson as well. So he's a guy that I think will help Detroit maybe make that run, especially with all the injuries they've suffered on that side of the ball. He's been the one constant on defense, especially in that defensive line. Keanu Benton, loved him coming out of Wisconsin. He just continues to get better. The thing is, you don't hear about him because he's in such a deep defensive line. Yeah,
he's like
he's like the fourth guy in that room, right? Yeah. So like, and people might even put Herbig in front of him as well too. So could be this fifth guy in that room. But he's a dog in the interior. And Travis Jones loved him out of UConn a few years ago. He's just a man child. He's hard to move on.
It's Jalen Carter and then like 12 periods and then everybody else.
Jalen Carter's in his own realm right now when you talk about young defensive tackles.
He is. I don't even play, and sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat.
He gets, and I know this is crazy to say, but when you turn on film, at times he gets Aaron Donald treatment.
He gets
the offensive line.
And he gets held every
single play. You have to hold him every single play.
Every single play.
Because he's that physically imposing and gifted.
Yep.
All right, there you have it. Thanks for the mailbag questions. As always, you can leave a 5-star review on our podcast with your question. We will answer it on the show. We'll be back tomorrow doing a full preview of Week 15 in the NFL.
Week 15.
Until then, keep pushing.
Peace.